This is a podcast by The Straits Times.
Welcome to the third episode of the Ask ST at NLB podcast series brought to you by the National Library Board. The monthly talks by the Straits Times correspondents were previously held at the Central Public Library, but due to COVID-19 safe distancing measures, we are converting the sessions into a podcast series done remotely. Listen to the correspondents you follow more intimately through our podcast. For this episode, the Straits Times Manpower correspondent Joanna Xiao has two guests. They are Singapore Human Resources Institute President Loh Pek Kim and Singapore National Employers Federation Executive Director Sim Gim Guan. They will discuss changes to the working place and our working lives thanks to COVID-19.
Hi Pek Kim, hi Gim Guan. Thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Joanna and Gim Guan. Thank you for having me in this podcast.
Hi, Joanna and Pek Kim. Thanks for having me.
Well, look at the three of us, all working remotely and not in a studio for this podcast. Sign of the times, right? It's phase 2 of the reopening of the economy now, so more workers are starting to go back on site. But telecommuting is still supposed to be the default option. So what does this mean for workforce agility and flexibility? And do we actually need to go into the office anymore? Pek Kim, what do you think?
I think as we speak, we'll be moving into phase 2 with safe transition very soon, within this week. I think most people are really looking forward to this new phase of safe transition. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, it has really forced us to take a serious look at alternative work arrangements, be it working from home, staggered hours, gig work, or part-time work. I think this is an important milestone for the workforce and companies as we learn that a large proportion of the work can really be done remotely and we can be actually more productive with the use of technology. Jobs can be redesigned to take advantage of very agile and diverse workforce. I think this pandemic has completely opened our minds to the possibilities of workforce agility and flexibility. And the key beneficiaries are really, parcels of work which can be done effectively at lower cost and really segments of the workforce who traditionally had not been able to go back to work because they couldn't find work or schedule that meets their lifestyle or their life stages. And now with the way that we are parceling work and decimizing how work is being done, I think a big portion of the workforce will have a good opportunity to go back to the society and contribute to the economy.
Yeah, indeed. So even as we move into phase 2 and some of us are starting to return back to the workplace, we're also seeing companies continue to have some proportion of their workforce that will continue to either work from home or telecommute, and that for those that do continue to go back to the office, the implementation of flexible work arrangements such as staggered work hours.
Okay, so to facilitate all these flexible arrangements, maybe we can talk a bit about technology next and digitalization. It took a crisis to get us going in this direction, and at the start, I think we were hearing about how some companies scrambled to buy laptops for staff when the circuit breaker started, and some employers I spoke with also told me that their finance staff had trouble because they could only access some higher level accounting software in the office. So maybe Pek Kim, can you tell us what is your view about redesigning more traditional jobs for the future?
Indeed, as we work towards Singapore being a smart nation with technology and digitization being here to stay, I think the sooner we adapt and embrace that change of where it is better for us to be more prepared for the future of work. I think one example of how we would have to redesign our work, one good example is, for example, the traditional recruitment process. Today, a lot of companies are doing RPA or robotic process automation, and the role of the traditional recruiter of advertising for the job openings in the traditional press media, screening hundreds of CVs, scheduling multi-parties, face-to-face interviews, etc. I think these are all becoming times of the past. With the career websites, things like LinkedIn, eCVs, video interviews, and using technology to really using AI to screen CVs and all that. I think the entire recruitment process is no longer what it used to be. Today, I think the technology has allowed us to be able to not only invite applicants to apply, but also to screen applicants really based on some criteria like skills and capabilities, and the AI is able to ask the right questions, analyze the answers which the candidates give before the best fit candidates are then surfaced for consideration. And I think the best thing about this is it's really purely based on your skills and your capabilities and not based on age, your gender, and your looks and race or religion. So I am a firm believer of using technology as an enabler to help us do our jobs better. And I think this is really super productive and I love it.
Yeah, when you describe it like that, I can see there are a lot of pros to it, both for the recruiters and the job seekers themselves. But like not everyone can work from home. I think like there are some people in essential services like healthcare, cleaning, public transport, landscaping, who I guess they still have to be there in person, right? So do you see transformation there too? Like making these jobs less labor intensive, maybe through telemedicine, robots, autonomous vehicles? I think these are some of the new things coming up.
Yes, of course. I think apart from personnel in the essential services like those that you have mentioned, those who really cannot really do their work effectively from home or not possible to do from home. Some of my colleagues who are in the frontline service counters who are serving the public, who have also not gotten accustomed to the e-services, they also have to go to work in order to serve the customers or the public that we are serving. But that said, there are also a lot of opportunities to go to make these jobs less labor intensive and really to let the robots and automation do the work. In the healthcare sector, for example, we have telemedicine like you rightly pointed out. So if you think about it, today, if I'm not feeling well or a bit under the weather, I don't really have to waste time commuting to the clinic, take a queue number and wait to consult the doctor for quite minor illness. And I can just use telemedicine and just from my phone consult a doctor. And with everything being integrated right now, even application of sick leave, payment of the consultation fees and all that, all these are automated, integrated into a seamless process, all done electronically behind the scenes. And this is already happening. And we are not even talking about, this is a far away future that we are going to see technology changing in this way. So like what many consultants have said, the future of work is already here. It's just not evenly distributed.
Makes sense. And just speaking about future crises, Kim Guan, do you think there's anything else that businesses should do to prepare?
Yeah, a crisis like the COVID-19 we have today, one of the key priority obviously is protecting the health of employees. But even as companies do that, they also need to think about how to minimize disruptions to their business operations. And so businesses will need to constantly review its business continuity plans and its readiness to execute those plans. So for example, are they able to incorporate safe management practices within its current operations? And perhaps they should also think about new workplace design and even simple questions like whether are they ready to implement split team arrangements and whether seating arrangements should be by department.
Okay, so besides workplace flexibility, COVID-19 is also a wake-up call for businesses to look at workforce sustainability. One of the big changes is that companies and clients are having to interact virtually, and so staff also need to get used to it and learn how to work differently. So Pek Kim and Kim Guan, one example I came across is a curtain and blinds retailer called MC2. It created new demo videos of its products, so sales staff would actually speak with customers over a video call and play video demos for them so that the customers could see the products in action without having to go down to a showroom. How else can we help workers have the right skills for these uncertain times?
Yes, the example you just raised is how companies can use digitalization to transform the way that they do business. And obviously, as they do so, they will need to upskill and reskill their workers so that the workers can take on new jobs or new ways of doing the job. At the employability skills level, besides ICT skills, the other employability skills that employers should equip their employees with are analytical, conceptual and evaluative skills, interpersonal skills, job safety skills, as well as personal management and development skills. At the same time, employees also have a part to play. They should have the desire to develop deep skills and achieve mastery in their area of work, whether it is to become a master chef or a cybersecurity expert.
Wow, those jobs sound very cool. I think that as employees, it's good to remain open to learning high-level skills to improve in our current job, or even picking up new skills to be redeployable in a new job. Because things are changing so fast and we can't just stay stagnant and expect, a successful career to just write itself for us. It reminds me of this survey of employers done during the circuit breaker by NTUC Learning Hub. It found that employers who were sending their staff for training or want to send their staff for training during the downtime because of COVID-19, they were placing a high priority on soft skills like adaptability and resilience, teamwork and innovation. Like what Kim Guan said, some firms are actually also adapting by investing in retraining staff so that they can take on new roles. For instance, there were some new place and train programs introduced by Workforce Singapore in this year's budget. One of them helps companies in the MICE, attractions, tour and travel sectors to redeploy staff into digital marketing roles.
Now, if you like the Ask ST at NLB podcast, please subscribe to the Straits Times for free on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Give us a rating too. This series is brought to you by the National Library Board. And now, back to our episode with the Straits Times Manpower correspondent Joanna Xiao and Singapore Human Resources Institute President Loh Pek Kim, and also Singapore National Employers Federation Executive Director Sim Kim Guan.
Okay, maybe we can discuss another debate as well, also to do with how sustainable our workforce is. So it's about whether Singapore should reduce its reliance on foreign workers. And I think this is especially important because our citizen working age population is supposed to start shrinking from around this year actually, even with immigrants. So Kim Guan, what do you think?
Yes, we are faced with an aging workforce and we should eventually shrink. So we will need to focus on productivity to reduce our reliance on manpower and not just the foreign ones. Leveraging on technologies and the redesign of work processes would be key. So one example that many of us will be familiar with will be the use of self-service counters in the supermarket. And the cashiers can also be multi-skilled and redeployed to other areas during non-peak hours. And in the scenario where the economy continues to grow, even if we are manpower lean, we will probably still need more workers. And the strategy could then be to tap on older workers as well as the more than 200,000 economically inactive individuals that are between the age of 40 to 60.
Wow, that's a lot. That's 200,000 people between the ages of 40 to 60 who choose not to work or can't work for some reason. The government has said that our labour force participation rate is already quite high, but maybe with some radical changes in terms of work options or childcare options, some of these people can still be coaxed to work.
For this, flexible work arrangements would be crucial. We know that some older workers neither want to work full-time or retire, so part-time option would help them stay in the workforce. They remain healthy and they can still contribute. And for the vast majority of the economically active, they are females who may have exited the workforce for family or caregiving reasons. With available technologies, flexible work can be worked out to retain them. And employers can tap on schemes like the Professional Conversion Program to train the workers to ease them back to the workforce. And foreign manpower would continue to be needed to complement and supplement our local workforce. Some bring in skills that we lack or are in shortage of, while others can work in areas where there are not enough locals.
Yeah, Kim Guan, you mentioned helping older workers remain healthy and productive. Pek Kim, I'm wondering if you have some thoughts as well on how we can help people to work productively longer into their lives?
Absolutely. And I completely agree with Kim Guan that this indeed is a problem that Singapore is faced with. And as we live longer, we all have to work longer to ensure retirement adequacy. Well, those of us who have children and grandchildren, our children and grandchildren most likely are going to live to celebrate their 100th birthday. As it is, Singapore's got one of the longest longevity at about 85 compared to other countries. And if you look at the normal working span, if we live till about 85 and we work from 20 years old to about 60 years old, we can probably afford to work for 40 years to support 40 years of not working. But if we live to 100, can we afford to only work for 40 years to support 60 years of not working? Economically, that just does not make sense. And when more services can be delivered digitally or virtually, biases like age, looks, nationality, geographical location, etc., I think a lot of this actually gets diminished, and it actually helps people who maybe in their 40s to their 60s or even up to their 70s who are able to continue to remain healthy and want to still continue to remain active and be productive. So I think this helps companies to better balance the kind of workforce that they have and also better balance the mix and diversity to ensure that they get the most out of their workforce. So when you advertise and you are looking for jobs, as long as you are quite clear of what are the kind of jobs and what kind of capabilities you're looking for, and how do you want to parcel those jobs. I think it's a win-win that people can continue to remain productive, and at the same time, companies can continue to tap on the wide range of talent pool that we have.
Well, that wraps up the first portion of our podcast. Thanks, Kim Wan and Peckham, for your insights. So now, for the next part of this session, we're going to tackle burning questions sent in by our readers after they responded to our ads in the Straits Times and at the National Library. Firstly, from our reader, Mr. Terence Tan, he's asking, how do we convince older generation business owners that working from home is a viable option for their workers? Kim Wan, do you want to take this?
While we are moving into phase 2, many companies during the circuit breaker and phase 1 of safe reopening have experienced for themselves how flexible work arrangements can benefit the business even as it supports the needs of their employees. But before I go further, I thought it might be useful to state that the terms that we see being used, remote working, telecommuting, working from home, are not exactly the same. So remote working means that work can take place anywhere outside of the office, not necessarily in Singapore too. Telecommuting, you can work from anywhere, including the office. Whereas working from home, obviously, you should be working from home. So generally, it is not about requiring the employees to work in the office or from home, but having a flexible work arrangement that aligns with the needs of the employer as well as the employee.
Yeah, I agree with Kim Guan. And I think the biggest obstacle I hear from employers and especially business owners is this element of, because they are not used to having all these flexible work arrangements, and the idea that, the flexible work arrangements only benefit the workers, and the workers can easily skive and not really do work and probably go shopping in the shopping mall instead of doing work. So I think this whole circuit breaker period have actually forced business owners as well as employees to have a bit more faith in trusting each other, that everybody is trying to do their best to try to contain the virus and at the same time still contribute to the economy. And if we trust and we believe that people really want to do a good job and create the environment for them to contribute and do a good job, and I'm sure everybody, both business owners as well as workers, will make this whole flexible work arrangements, be it working from home or remote working or staggered hours or working part-time, it will work for us.
Well, I like that really positive, encouraging vibe. Following up on that, some workers themselves, even especially older workers, may not be that comfortable working from home. So how do we make it easier for them?
No, I believe that one of the potential barrier is unfamiliarity with the use of technology. So for that, there has been quite a number of different efforts, such as the Seniors Go Digital program by the Infocom Media Development Authority, which, as the name suggests, help our seniors go digital. And as I highlighted earlier, ICT skills is one of the employability skills that businesses need to equip their employees with to support their transformation as well as their digitalization efforts. I believe that one of the potential barrier is unfamiliarity with the use of technology. And for that, there has been different efforts such as the Seniors Go Digital program by IMDA, which, as the name suggests, help our seniors go digital. And as I've highlighted earlier, ICT skills is one of the employability skills that businesses need to equip their employees with to support their transformation and digitalization efforts.
Yes, I absolutely agree with Kim Guan. In fact, a few months ago, before the circuit breaker, I spent a few weekends outside a shopping mall teaching the pioneer generation how to use their smartphones for a lot of the government transactions, and also to use apps like the NEA app to tell you the weather, and also to tell you which days you can go to the park when it's not crowded, and so on and so forth. And apart from technology, I think honestly, for flexible work arrangements to work, especially working from home, I think one key factor is really the trust. There must be trust between the supervisor and the employee, that the employee is actually working, just that it's at the home office and not in the traditional office space. And especially for older colleagues who are not comfortable working from home, we should really seek to understand what are some of their challenges and provide them with the assurance that we will walk the journey with them to help them get accustomed to that new way of work. They may make mistakes along the way, here and there, fumbling with technology enablers. It may take you like 15 minutes to get ready to do a webcast or webinar and all that. But I think with the right equipment, with the right training, we can all learn to pick up these new skills and slowly get accustomed to that new normal.
Okay, great. And maybe we can turn to our second question from our reader, Miss Judy Tan. So she's asking, what are the best practices to assess work performance of staff working from home? And how can supervisors effectively engage and manage their staff remotely? Maybe, Pekem, you can take this first.
I feel compelled to do this since I'm president of SHRI. Yeah, I think first of all, it's important that we set quite clear and agreed upon KPIs and outcomes, which is expected of your staff. And make sure that there are also reasonable milestones set towards achieving those goals. While working from home, I think supervisors really have to go the extra mile to see how to effectively engage with your staff. Since you can't possibly just pop into their workstation to check in on their progress, I think now with the virtual platform, we have to take conscious effort to set regular e-check-ins. And this can be done through a dashboard reporting system or just a regular daily or weekly check-in through teleconference. It is also important to make sure that you show genuine care and concern for your staff and be asking about their well-being apart from just work. Personally, I find that I work a lot harder and I put in longer hours while I'm working from home. Mainly because the lines are quite blurred between work and home and between working hours and break time. So it actually takes a lot of discipline to set aside time to take breaks and to draw the line between what's work and what's rest. Because after all, a healthy and a happy staff is a more effective staff.
I agree with Pekem. Maybe just to add that many of the best practices that Pekem had highlighted are relevant regardless of whether the staff is working from home or in the office. And the more we are able to measure an employee's performance by outcome rather than what we call face time productivity or time spent in office, I think that will help us better manage our staff.
Yeah, as an employee, I'd really welcome a greater shift in that direction. I think journalism is one job where that works quite well already, since we have clear output in terms of articles that we can show, so it doesn't really matter where we're working from or how long it takes us to get it done, as long as we do get it done. And also what my team has been doing so far is like what Pekem said, having regular check-ins on video conference. It's just nice to catch up and remind ourselves that we're part of a team, and you even get to see your colleagues in their home environments. And I really like what Pekem said about supervisors caring about people's general well-being. I think while some people find working remotely very liberating and productive, other people may find working alone quite isolating and depressing. Or they may need help managing their workload because maybe it's easier for bosses to forget about how much work someone has been assigned when you don't see or hear from them in a while. So I think most of us appreciate our supervisors taking a few minutes to genuinely find out how we're doing. Okay, finally, we have a question about the long term from Mr. Rufus Yeo. He's asking, 1 year from now, what would be the most significant change in the job market? And will whatever is happening now impact jobs and work-related policies in the next decade?
You know, the COVID-19 demonstrates quite clearly that we are living in an uncertain world. And it will clearly be quite uncertain how the labour market will look like 1 year from now. But we can prepare for uncertainties by being agile. Possessing employability skills and embracing lifelong learning will enable our employees to develop agile skill sets. And more importantly, having an agile mindset will help workers to remain resilient and adaptable to change. And the skills future movement will be crucial to help our workers develop agile skill sets and agile mindsets. In addition, our labour market has to remain flexible to be responsive to any change so as to support job creation.
Absolutely. I think as we live longer, we really have to keep both our minds and body healthy to enjoy the longer lifespan. And as the workforce become more agile, work as we know will be decimalized, and tapping on whichever form of workforce or talent that we can get our hands on to get the job done. Work-related policies would have to be more flexible to get the job done in the most effective and cost-effective as well as labour-effective manner. And people and HR-related policies will also have to be skewed towards really protecting the workers instead of just protecting the jobs and keeping our workers well-trained and well-prepared for that future. So even though we say it's like a year from now, how will it impact work? Well, work is already being impacted right now. And as we move forward, 1 year or even 2 years or 3 years beyond, like what Kim Guan have said, it's important to continuously upgrade ourselves, continuously look at what are some of the future skills that are needed. And as we keep our minds healthy and upgraded, we also have to make sure that our body, and our mental well-being are also keeping pace to make sure that we enjoy the journey.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for this session. Pek Ken, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you, Joanna. It has been an absolute pleasure to join you and Kim Guan in this podcast.
Kim Guan, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Joanna and Pek Ken. Glad to be here this afternoon.
And to all our listeners, thank you for your questions. Have a great day and stay safe.
Well, that's a wrap, and we'd like to thank our readers for sending in their questions. This series is brought to you by the National Library Board. Follow The Straits Times on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcast apps to catch the next episode of Ask ST at NLB.
That was an SPH podcast by The Straits Times. Find us on Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts, or streaming on Google Home. Do feedback to us at podcast@sph.com.sg. You can also check out more podcasts on various topics at The Straits Times, The Business Times, and Money FM 89.3.